Hi, my name is Stephanie Patton, and I am the coordinator for the Oasis Coalition, and you are watching another episode of United for a Healthy Stoughton. Today we're going to be talking about positive community norms, and I have two guests with me here in the studio today. All the way to my right is Karen MacDonald, who is the director of the Stoughton Youth Commission and also one of the co-chairs of the Oasis Coalition, in addition to being the director of the Stoughton Council on Aging. And immediately to my right is Jeff Pickette, who is the program and news director here at SMAC. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Great. And we thought what we would start out with today is we're going to show you a short video clip of a program entitled What Stoughton Means to Me. And this video was shot, it's actually a conglomerate of 3 videos, a project that we did about a year ago, really interviewing local residents and trying to get at really what Stoughton means to them. So we'll let you watch the clip and then we'll talk about it. Hi, I'm Stephanie Patton. I'm the prevention coordinator for the Oasis Coalition in Stoughton. We know that a lot of great things are already happening in Stoughton, but sometimes we forget to talk about them. We would like to kickstart a conversation about all of the wonderful things that are happening already. What does Stoughton mean to you?
Wonderful schools, caring teachers, terrific town employees, and a population of people who really seem to come together when the going gets tough.
What Stoughton means to me is fun sports, a great school, and a really good music program.
To me, Stoughton is a very special town. It's got great volunteerism and a real sense of community.
What Stoughton means for me is home. I've traveled all over the world. I've been to places I never imagined I would ever go, but there's nothing like coming back to Stoughton and being home.
My name is Joan DiMatteo. I have lived in Stoughton for 77 years, and my children grew up in Stoughton. They graduated from all the Stoughton schools, and it is a wonderful town. My parents, their parents, and their parents all grew up and were born in Stoughton, so I am really an originalite in Stoughton.
Stoughton is community with a lot of people that, care and love each other.
What Stoughton means to me is a wonderful school system and great people, but most importantly, Danino's, chicken parm from Danino's, Town Spa Pizza, all the wonderful places to eat and enjoy yourself in Stoughton.
It's knowing what's going on and being a part of making it better here in Stoughton.
Carlos Vargas from Vargas & Vargas Insurance. What does Stoughton mean to me? Stoughton means community to me.
What does Stoughton mean to you?
Stoughton is a wonderfully diverse community. Really happy to have moved here 17 years ago, and we've been here for a long time. My kids love it. It's a great town. Really love it.
Hi, my name is Peg Carboni, and Stoughton is, to me, an example of generosity because their weekly support for the food pantry for the last 4 years is phenomenal.
What does Stoughton mean to me? Well, I'm on the events committee too, so to me, Stoughton means bringing the community together for fun events like our holiday parade, and just seeing happy faces, especially around the holiday times.
This is Nadine Israel, and I want to let you know what Stoughton means to me. It's an awesome place to live. It's really convenient to a lot of places, both Boston and Providence, a lot of stuff going on. Awesome people in the town. Everybody's always willing to help, and it's just a lovely, lovely place to live.
Great. I love the spirit in this video. So that was a really terrific project. So that was, as we had said before, there were actually 3 videos originally. And if you would like to see more of that footage and to watch those videos in their entirety, you can find them both on the SMAC website as well as on the Stoughton Oasis website or Facebook page. And we'll make sure we share those websites with you at the end so people can access those. So actually, Jeff, I'd like to start with you. And so as a lifelong Stoughttonian, can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that really resonated with you in this video as you listened to it?
Sure. I thought that video really showed the just a general theme of what Stoughton's all about. People were talking about the community and the organizations and activities they're involved with, whether it be at the school level or town-wide level. The location of Stoughton and that being advantageous, close to 2 major cities. And just the spirit of people supporting each other either in times of need or just to rally around a cause. And so I think just that 3 minutes, you kind of really heard everything that is good about Stoughton and its people.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. And I think if you were to watch all of those videos in their entirety, you would hear those same things kind of over and over and over again. So as we said, this was a really condensed selection, but some really great stuff. So we would encourage you to look at that. So I'm going to switch over to Karen and sort of pull this into the conversation that we're having today, which is really about positive community norms, and ask Karen to define for us what is the science of the positive or positive community norms, and what is that framework?
Well, it really starts from coming from a place of being strength-based. So we want to grow what's strong in Stoughton because what's strong in Stoughton and those foundations are really the building blocks of any community. And Stoughton has very strong roots and very strong history. And it's a way for us to think about conversations a little bit differently. It's a way for us to frame how we do the work that we do. And when we talk about coming from a positive place, that's a little bit more unusual than some of the ways that the media not Jeff at all, but I think that like the media in general often talks about the negative pieces of things, that the positive pieces are more like fluff, but we really come from it from a completely different point of view. And so what are the positive things? Why are they positive? Why do they resonate for the town people? What happens with those things? When we talk about positive, the things that are positive about a family, a community, are really the things that help kids to become better human beings, to be more productive, less likely to do drugs, more likely to be members of their community that do positive things. So it's a way that we grow. It's a way we grow our community. It's a way we grow our families. An example of it is when kids come home with their report cards. Focusing on our natural inclination is to focus on the D's and the F's and like, why did you get those? But really flipping that conversation and talking about like, why did you get the A? How were you able to get the A? What was the what was the work that went behind that? And trying to figure out a community strength. But that's a community, we do this. And so that whole framework is the positive community norms. And we really talk about it from 4 different things. And I think we have a picture of it from the spirit, the science, the action, and the return. So what you heard in those videos was really the spirit of Stoughton.
Maybe we can bring that slide up.
Thank you. Spirit. What will the spirit of our work look like? And in Stoughton, it's talking about my parents and my parents and my parents lived here. I raised my children here. They're raising their children here. The fact that people that they know who they are. They're Stoughtonians. And that people help each other. And that's one of the things that I have been, in my years here, truly amazed at, is that when people ask for volunteers, there are always volunteers. When people ask for a cause, there are always people who are willing to help that. And that was like in the CAPP playground. One of the really nice things from even from the 80s was how the community came together to build the CAPP playground in general.
Mm-hmm. And we have a picture of that too, if folks.
Yeah, and this is the new one in 2015. But the spirit of the place is still the same. That brought all the volunteers together to take care of it for such a great long period of time. So the old CAPP playground was one of the only remaining wooden structures still around because the town took care of it. Volunteers helped to clean it up. They believed in it from the beginning, and then that same spirit helped us to do those to do the renovations. And when we did the renovations, we talked about the science. So what things work? What things make it a safe place? Like everything from the turf to the lighting to the all the different factors. I could go on and on, but then the action, making it happen, and then the return, seeing all the kids play there. So all of the work that we do in Stoughton and through Oasis is based on this work, and it's really based on one of our mentors, Dr. Jeff Linkenbach, has come to Stoughton. We've had him; he's a national known speaker, and he really does. Has coined the phrase positive community norms, because it's more than just the feeling good. There's a whole science that goes around that we're really pleased to have. So I think that's a kind of a compact answer. And then we look at what we did. Did it work? Did it not work? And then we do something else. And then we start the whole process again. But throughout it is spirit.
Great. Right. So you started to share some examples of the ways that Oasis has used this work. So we talked about the CAPP Playground project. And in fact, we did a whole episode here about that project and how it came to be. And we really sort of took apart what are some of those pieces to the spirit piece, the science behind, as you were talking about, what components went into the structure. How did we make sure people were going to be safe? How did we discourage sort of risky behavior there and grow all these positive behaviors that you were talking about and put that into action, and how did we fund that and all of those pieces. What are some of the other ways that Oasis has really worked this model in some of our work? Well,
we really take, one of the things that we do all the time is we talk about the good choices that kids are making all the time. We know that some kids are using drugs, but most kids are not. Mm-hmm. Most kids are making good choices. They're listening to their parents. They go to school every day. They play sports. They go to music. They go to temple. They go to church, doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. Then there's a minority of kids who we have concern about, and we're also helping to do those things. But we want people to know that kids are making good choices. So when you look at this slide that's here, that the numbers in orange are what kids are actually doing. But if you talk to kids, and sometimes even parents, they think everybody's doing drugs. Everybody but me is doing drugs. And we want to actually highlight that that's actually not true. When you look at the numbers, 26%, 23%, 4%, those numbers are still too high, and that's the hope. That's the concern that we have. But our hope and where we come from is that most kids are doing very good things. They're making very good choices. They're being good teenagers. And we want to highlight those things. So we come from that in all of our work that we do. We do it when we're working with parents. We do it when we're working with kids, with the schools, educating people around those things, so that when kids are faced with that decision, do I smoke pot? Do I not smoke pot? Do I take a drink? Do I not take a drink? They're doing it based on knowing that most kids are not actually doing it. So that's a piece of our work, and it's called it's the social norms. So trying to talk about the perception and some of the science that goes along with that is that if you change the kids' perception of how kids are doing, their actual use rates goes down, and that's proven in study after study, and that's the science. When we talk about that circle that we talk about, the spirit, the kids are really good kids. The science that when the perception changes, the rates go down, which is the action, the return, good community members, good adults that we're raising here in Stoughton.
Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly because I attended a couple of the seminars that Dr. Linkenbach was really stressing on the slide, stressing the numbers of the people who aren't using, rather than phrasing it as 23% of youth does this. Mm-hmm. It would be that 77% do not. Right. Yep, exactly. Yeah, right. And Karen was talking about there's a tension, a positive tension between this hope and concern. And so the fact that most kids don't drink alcohol here in Stoughton and actually across the Commonwealth, and most kids don't use marijuana, and most kids are not abusing prescription drugs, that's hopeful, that's hope. And those are the numbers we want to grow. And
even to go back to Karen's example about the grades, like we need to understand why is that happening with those kids so that we can apply that same science and use those use that information to help the kids that we're concerned about. So that 23 or 26% of kids who have experimented or are using alcohol or other drugs that, you know, we are concerned about them. This isn't about rosy colored glasses and wow, everything's perfect and we're just gonna turn a blind eye to that. Of course we would not. That's not our work, but our work is to really, again, to try to focus on those positive numbers and make them bigger. In grants, we don't do that. We would never tell our funder, look at how great our numbers look, and we don't have any more work to do, because that's absolutely not true. But really to think about when do you highlight the statistic? You know, it's the same statistic. It's just really about how you talk about it, right?
Well, and I think that goes, you know, and we talk about that from the individual, a school, a community, that when we focus on the positive things, even for that youth who is using, that is not all of who they are. Right. That doesn't mean that they are not an amazing guitar player, or no stereotypes, but you know, something like that. They're not an amazing guitar player, or that they're not a really great big brother or big sister, or so we want them to feel those positive pieces as well, so that they can, you know, minimize the negative and accentuate the positive. And we want to do that not only we do that on a community level too, as well. So we want to focus a lot of the stuff that, you know, what are the great things that Stoughton is doing? You know, these things that are coming about in Stoughton, these changes that happen, the great school systems that we've been able to do. What types of things are our kids doing when they graduate? You know, the POPs program and the band, and we could, you know, that list goes on and on and on. But I think that, you know, we want to try to grow those things. And why do they work in Stoughton? You know, because some things that work in Stoughton might not work in Easton or Canton, but the positive stuff, and we want to figure out those things and grow them.
Right. Yep. And I think for a minute up there, we were looking at the slide that shows the yellow bar with the gap, and we were talking about really how do we close the gap between what's actually really happening, and we know that what's actually happening is something that's really good, and sometimes the misperception that these risky behaviors in this case are bigger than they are. And so really this is about telling the truth and sharing the stories of all of the good, and not making stuff up, because we don't need to make stuff up. A lot of great stuff's already happening. So actually, which sort of leads me well into the next question, which I have for Jeff, kind of going back, and Karen alluded to this earlier, that a lot of times in the news, you know, you always hear about like if it bleeds, it leads, right? And Jeffrey's been in the news world for a long time, and we know that isn't your philosophy. It's not how you report things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think first of all that you do have to report what happens, whether that's good, bad, or somewhere in between. I think that. So I don't think that there should ever be whitewashing of what's going on, or just a different, an inaccurate representation. But that being said, just because there might be some not so positive things happening, that doesn't mean that you have to ignore the positive. And so their mugshots are always going to get clicks, like for a news website. But that doesn't mean that a news organization should be ignoring the athletes at the high school, or the musicians, or the science fair winners, or you know, things going on at the youth commission, or great programs that Oasis or the police department or the fire department are initiating. It's a balance of both, and I think that there has to be that balance, and that you have to show the positive, because it's not just mugshots. And I think that I have to give credit to a newspaper I wrote for when I was in college, the Canton Citizen. It's a privately owned newspaper, and their philosophy was very Rockwellian, if that's a term. You know, just they had a very positive image of the Canton community, and they still covered the bad stuff, but they really brought their citizens to life, and and really showed their community in a positive light. And so when I got my first job at Stoughton Patch, that was my philosophy, because that's what I had learned under, and I, you know, carried that now to my current job here at SMAC. You know, highlighting the positive in the community and all of the great things that are going on. And that doesn't mean that you ignore everything else, but it's still important to discuss. And I actually think this show is a good example of that. I think this show is another way of highlighting positive work. I mean, this is the 5th episode. In the first 4 episodes, there have been talks, like you said, about the CAPP playground. You've had Karen and Tim on from the recreation department to discuss activities that children can partake in, and you've also did an interview with Donna Kaplan, nurse at the South School, and Todd Brown, who's a pharmacist at Northeastern who lives in Stoughton, about a medication safety program that you did with kids. And I think highlighting those type of activities is that's a community needs that. They need to know what's going on other than just the latest controversy.
Great.
And I think that one of the things is that we want to be proactive and not reactive. And I think that that's really kind of that shift. And I know that exactly what you're talking about. So that, that bad things do happen, but coming from it from a place of what can we do now, or what else is working, what other things, what other nets or what other pieces do we have to help to deal with that, instead of coming at it from a fear-based place where that it might be reactionary. To be proactive, to be always thinking about moving forward, that bad things do happen, but bad things happen lessly. I don't know, that's not a word, but but when a community comes together. So if there is, something that happens, when the community comes together to help to deal with that tragedy, it makes it better, it makes it easier for all of the community members to deal with. Like when we're talking about the Narcan and the opioid crisis, one of the things that Stoughton really came together around was thinking about our community as community members. And that just because they're having an issue and they're overdosing doesn't mean that they're not part of our community. And that's one of the reasons that the town was the first in the Commonwealth to independently carry Narcan for the first responders, for the police and the fire who had been carrying it, but for the police to be able to do that, because we care about our community members and we want to give them every opportunity to make a better choice next time. And so that's some of the work that happens through Oasis and things like that, and why positive community norms. We could put our head in the sand and say that this bad thing isn't happening to our community members, or we can try to move forward and be proactive about it and give people opportunities to be able to do, not only to get Narcan and be have their lives saved, but then our hope is that they will make a better choice next time, or that we as a community can support them in the sobriety, in the recovery, so that the next generation doesn't happen, but also by giving the next generation the tools that they need to not use that, to give good policies, make sure we're working at the local, the state level, to make sure that our policies help kids to make better choices.
I think to build off of that, program you held last year at the library, when a number came out, I think might have been Channel 5 that had a graphic and a slide, and the exact number of per capita deaths for opioid overdoses put us in the top 20, I believe, for the state. And so, that obviously generated a lot of buzz, because again, per capita, that we were right up there with large urban areas. And the program that you did addressed all of the facts, but also put into perspective where Stoughton really was and what Stoughton was doing to address that opiate issue, rather than just ignoring it and saying, well, that number is inaccurate, it doesn't really tell the whole story, and just leaving it at that. No, there was a whole hour-long discussion about it.
Right. And I think that the opiate example, and we have some photos actually of some of our colleagues and teammates who were involved in some of this work. It's a really good example of positive community norms, because it is an issue that feels so negative sort of on the face of it, and it's scary, and people are talking about it, and yet, as Karen had talked about too, as a community, we're dealing with this head on. We care about our community members. We are taking action to help people, and we were recognized nationally for this work. So that photo actually in the bottom left-hand corner is a group of us who were invited to Atlanta to the National Prescription Drug Abuse Conference to talk about the pioneering work that Stoughton was doing around nasal naloxone and first responders, and being able to share that model across the country with police and fire departments and other community coalitions and groups that really wanted to learn from us and from our model. So it was great to be recognized for this work. And it really was pioneering work, and it was work that could have been controversial in some ways, but here in Stoughton, it really wasn't. It was actually an easy policy to put into place because people really do, they come together. We're a community that collaborates a lot interdepartmentally through the coalition, and and this was a project that it had a lot of moving parts in order to pull it off, and we were able to do it. It looked very seamless, I think, from the surface, because all of these other really great things were in place. And so I always like that as an example, because I think people think positive community norms and Narcan and opiates, how can that possibly be in the same sentence? Whereas the CAPP Playground Project feels very positive even from the get-go, and so it's a little bit easier to understand. So as we're starting to come to a close, I want to make sure we do give good recognition to Dr. Jeffrey Linkenbach and his work at the Montana Institute. Some of these slides came from Dr. Linkenbach and the lessons that he's taught us. He's been a huge mentor to us here in Stoughton and a colleague, and it's been amazing to have him as a sounding board as we continue to do this work and evolve all of the parts that we do. And I'd like to ask each of you if you have any other closing remarks. And
I just think that I am always truly amazed at that people can have differences and still come together and still do good work, and that sometimes what people perceive as negative is actually things can be very positive. Not positive, but I think that just the willingness to discord, the willingness to debate, all of those things is a very important piece, and I think that Stoughton does a really good job in many, many things.
Great.
And I think approaching things from a positive viewpoint is not an indication that you're ignoring the problems around you. I think that being positive is just a different way to approach finding solutions to a problem.
Great. Great. Thank you so much.